Hello there everybody and welcome back to Movie Squirm. This is going to be my final list of 2023. I've done a few end of year lists here, so if you want to check them out, I'll leave the link to them down below. I've done my most disappointing movies of the year, most surprising movies of the year, my top 10 2023 movies, and I've ranked every single horror movie I watched in 2023 as well. So for all that good stuff, that'll be in the link down below. But today we are doing my top 10 first time watchers of 2023. So all of the movies in this video will not be from 2023. They'll either be from 2022 or below. And I think the lowest might be 1980 here. So these are all movies, horror movies, that I watched for the first time in 2023. Some little classics on here and stuff. People might be like, oh my God, you haven't watched that one. But we'll just wait and see. And these are going to feel pretty random because they could really be anything, couldn't they? So let's just get into it now with part 10. First up, we have The House on the Edge of the Park. This got a nice shiny 4K release this year, and it was a video nasty I've just never got round to. And this follows David Hess and his sort of deranged brother, really, and they get invited to this party full of rich people, and these rich people sort of start to take the mick out of them a little bit there. And David Hess doesn't take too kindly to that and starts to wreak havoc on these family and friends, basically. And there's a lot of rapey moments in this movie, which I didn't care too much for, and a few violent scenes here and there. But David Hess just shows all these crazy faces. I mean, I think he's so fun to look at when he's just really doing his maniac face, if you like. And I can see why he was in so many of these movies, like Last House on the Left and stuff. He really does play a good villain. And I thought, there's not much to this film. Is this just him terrorizing his family and stuff? But by the end, I think it wrapped up really nicely and actually had a story going for it. And I thought, you know what? That was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I expected the worst from this, but the way it all wrapped up really worked for me. There was some really great music in there as well. There was a song in the middle of the movie that I was just listening to for hours on end after it. So yeah, House on the Edge of the Park, one of the better video nasties. That is number 10. Next up, we have Eli Roth's The Green Inferno. Now, this is a movie I'd heard was very brutal. I just never checked it out before, and I watched all of Eli Roth's movies leading up to Thanksgiving this year. Done a full ranking on that on the channel. But this was one I was quite excited to check out. Now, this really does follow in the vein of Cannibal Holocaust, Cannibal Ferox and stuff, but in a modern way, really. It really does pay homage to them and take a lot of leaves out of their book, but, just in a modern setting. And I thought Eli Roth done a fun job of this movie. I mean, there's a little bit of comedy thrown here and there, but then the brutal scene makes you forget about the comedy straight away because there's so many brutal moments. And I think this has got one of the best death scenes in any Eli Roth movie, where this guy is being mutilated. But the story basically follows this group of environmentalists who basically want to save the rainforests and stuff like that, and they go and do a protest there. And when they're on their way out on the plane crashes, and they meet up with all these cannibals who kidnap them and take them to their little village and start cooking them one by one. And it's up to these characters to try and escape, and they try to come up with plans and stuff like that. But in the third act, there's some really strange moments, but I couldn't help but be entertained by them. Like, they decided to put a big load of this stone in it, decided to put a big load of weed into this dead girl's body who's in the cage. And when they all cook this girl and eat her, they all become stoned. And they think, okay, they'll be conked out now. Let's make a run for it. But it actually makes them hungrier because they've got the munchies. So they try and come in the cage for them. There's a weird moment where this guy's just jacking off to relieve stress. But the gore, the comedy, I thought it found a fine balance there to make a very entertaining and fun film. So this is one of my favourite Eli Roth movies that I watched. Yeah, that is The Green Inferno. Next up, we have The Exorcism of Emily Rose. And this follows this priest who has been accused of not helping out this girl because she was very sick. And by performing an exorcism on her, it has actually killed her because she didn't get the help that was required. And this is basically a courtroom drama that flashes back to that night, and the life of Emily Rose before it all happened as well. And it was a really interesting tale, basically, on the demonic possession side of things, because these are movies that we just get all of the time now, but the fact that it was a courtroom drama kind of worked for me. And I like the way the movie intertwined. You kind of felt for this priest and stuff, and you kind of wanted them to get away with it, because, you know, when you see the flashbacks and stuff, you can easily tell what was happening here. And I like how his attorney was starting to see sort of creepy goings on as the trial was going on and stuff like that himself. Thought that played in really well. But I thought this was just a really good story, really, and one that basically just I really got into, and kind of wanted everything to work out best for this priest. Really creepy moments in there as well, involving Emily Rose when we go back to the flashbacks and stuff like that. I just thought it was a nice, thought-provoking film. So that is The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Next up we have It Comes at Night, which is basically a movie that feels like The Last of Us, like this apocalyptic world, but we only see it from the point of view of this guy played by Joel Edgerton, and his family, who are living in this little cabin, basically. And they meet these other characters, this other family, who are in need of water and supplies. And he doesn't know whether to trust them or not, but they become friends. And they end up moving into the house with this family. And it just shows how these characters interact with another, how they work together. But there is this impending doom of this virus just on the outside, and you've got to be very careful, because you can turn into one of these like mutant type characters and stuff like that. And there's a lot of tension built, because these characters just don't know whether to trust each other, whether they've gone out the house without telling each other and stuff. I thought that dynamic of the characters worked really well. You know, when they're on screen together, having discussions and the dialogue and stuff like that. But I just like the feel of the world as well. It really did feel like this world was decimated, even though we're only in this one singular location. So yeah, I thought this was a really cool movie. That is It Comes at Night. Next up is a movie that people may be shocked this is a first time watch. I just never got round to it, and that is Sleepaway Camp. Now, I watched all of these films this year, and this one was the best one, the first one. Although I did really like the second one as well. I picked them up on Blu-ray and stuff, the second and the third one. So I had a fun time with this franchise. But the first one for me is like a beautiful disaster, if you like. I mean, the acting is horrendous. The editing and stuff is bad. But man, I just had so much fun with this movie. This basically follows Angela and her cousin, a cousin, who go and stay at this camp, and there's this killer going around. You've seen it all before, haven't you? But man, there's some weird characters in this movie, like the aunt who sends them to Sleepaway Camp. It's like just the worst actors I've ever seen, but it's so fun to watch it in this bizarre performance.
Look what I did. I packed you and your cousin some goodies for the ride up to camp. Wasn't that nice of me?
Performance. And you've got like pedophiles who are fully admitting that they're pedophiles. Like when all the kids are coming in to the camp, he's like, oh, look at all that fresh young chicken. The next minute he gets the worst death imaginable. So I was kind of glad to see him get his comeuppance. There's people who are being drowned, and when they're drowned, like when they're getting pulled under the water, they're like waving to get pulled under and stuff. And it's got one of the most famous horror reveals, hasn't it, at the end. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. If not, I won't give it away too much, but yeah, you know what I mean. So yeah, I mean, I had a fun time with this. I really did. And it was just quite unbelievable while you're watching it that this movie exists. So that is Sleepaway Camp. Next up we have Saint Maud, which follows this care worker who was looking after this famous actress. But this care worker has had a bit of a bad past, and she's come into a religion in her life. And she's trying to get this care worker to get into the religion that she's in, which is Christianity. And this care worker sort of goes along with it. And then the care worker decides to hire someone else, and this Saint Maud character starts to get a little bit jealous there, and sinister things start to happen, basically. And this Maud character really does go down this really dark path because her religion is sort of her whole life now, stuff like that. And it's just weird to see where this character is going in the movie. Now, what really made this film for me above anything else was the ending. And I've never seen a movie totally change like that within half a second. Like, I was just like, oh shit, movie ends. So it's totally worth watching just for that split second at the end there. But it kind of makes you think, like, was this really going on, or was this one really going on as well? So it's up to interpretation. But yeah, a really slow-paced film. It takes its time to do what it's doing, but it worked for me. I wouldn't say I had a great time with it, but I was glued to the screen, put it that way. So that is Saint Maud. Next up, we have the Clovehitch Killer, and as soon as I read the plot and the synopsis on this one, I instantly wanted to watch it. And this follows this this guy who and his family who live in this neighborhood. And years ago, there was this killer, 10 years before, killing people, and he never got caught. And this guy's son goes into his father's shed, and he sees something in there that is hidden behind this secret door, which might reveal that his father is, in fact, the Clovehitch Killer. And he doesn't really tell anyone apart from this one friend he's got, and him and his friend are sort of investigating his own father to see if he is actually this Clovehitch Killer that never got caught. And the father's like this Ned Flanders character. He's like very happy and stuff, but you can tell he's got a sinister side to him and stuff like that. But I just loved how the movie sort of unraveled this story, how it all played out. There was some tense moments with the father and son there, when his father is sort of suspecting things and stuff like that. I really just wanted to know what the outcome was going to be, whether it was him who was this killer or not, if it was going to be someone else. It's like a mystery that you go along for the ride with these two characters. So yeah, I had a great time with this one. One that has just, again, kept me glued to the screen. So that is Clovehitch Killer. Next up, we have a movie from France called High Tension. I've actually fully reviewed this movie on the channel, and this was known to be one of the French extreme movies that came out around the time of Martyrs and Inside and stuff, Frontiers. So this is one that I really did want to check out. Now, this follows these two girls, young adult girls, and they go and stay with one of the girls' family at this farm. And that night, this killer breaks into the farm and basically kills the whole family and kidnaps one of the girls. And the other girl sort of gets away and follows this killer and the kidnapped girl on this journey to try and sort of rescue her. Now, there's some brutal scenes in this movie, man. I mean, it does go for it. This killer is despicable. You absolutely hate the guy. He's this fat, obese, sort of smelly looking character who's just drinking whiskey and smoking cigarettes and stuff, and he just looks like he's on the edge of a heart attack, but he's just so brutal and unsympathetic. He's just really killing people in horrible ways here, and you just hate the guy. You can't stand him. And the movie, you feel like you know where it's going, and then something happens, and I was like, whoa, didn't see that one coming. And a lot of people hate the movie for that, but it definitely enhanced the movie for me personally. We could have just done a simple concept where it just plays out like a serial killer movie, home invasion film, but it's a bit more clever than that, and I appreciated it. This was something a little bit different that worked for me. So that is High Tension. Next up is Nightmare Beach, and I've always been intrigued by this film just for the cover art. And I picked the Blu-ray up in my local store and just went, yeah, I'm going to give this a go. I went home and watched it, and I was absolutely blown away by how much I liked this movie. This is another one I fully reviewed on the channel. I'll leave the links down below. And this is about this biker going around killing people in this like summer vacation town of Miami. Everyone's on, I think it's Miami or Florida, whatever it is. And they're all on spring break, basically. So there's teenagers everywhere. And it's basically about this killer going around killing a few of them. And that seems like a simple concept, but there was a lot more story in there, I thought, than your average slasher. Like, there's a rift going on between the bikers and the police department. People don't know if the killer is this guy who's at the head of the biker gang who's been executed and he's coming back, or did he really get away? It's a mystery movie. You don't really know who the killer is, so you got that aspect. You got two main characters who are investigating it themselves and go on this detective hunt, really, to find out what is really happening. There was just a lot of good story beats thrown in there surrounding the actual killings, but the killings themselves and the slasher moments were awesome. Some really fun scenes here. A lot of it involves electricity to kill people, but I thought the killer had a really cool look about him as well. He got the leather jacket on, this red helmet, kind of like reminded me of Christine as a motorbike. That's what it looked like, with this red motorbike and stuff like that. So yeah, for me, this is one of my favourite slashers from the 80s now, I suppose. I thought it was just really enjoyable. So that is Nightmare Beach. First off, though, we have a British movie called Bull. Now, people may not think that this is a horror movie, but for me, I definitely do. Especially for when the overall movie is ended, basically, put it that way. But this is basically Neil Maskell, who wants a little bit of revenge on his ex-wife's family who wronged done him in the past. And he is going to stop at nothing to get his own back. And if you think High Tension was brutal, this goes down a very similar path as well. There's people's fingers being chopped off here. There's people being stabbed on fairground rides as they're, in the 100 miles an hour on these rides and stuff like that. Neil Maskell is absolutely terrifying in this movie. He's so threatening. He's in people's faces. He's just gonna get what he wants. He wants to kill these people, and that's the end of it. And I just couldn't take my eyes off it. I didn't know Neil Maskell had this performance in him. I know he's a good actor, but this is definitely his strongest performance overall. And I was just watching going, man, this movie is killing it. Every single scene, I was just waiting for him to look at these characters with his eyes and just like, you just... It's a strong performance. It's a commanding performance, really, and he is terrifying in this movie. I like the way the movie sort of goes in the present and the past, so you can see how they wronged on him, but how they're going to try and deal with him now as well. When he's coming back for revenge and stuff, this horrible family who wronged on him, the side characters are all assholes, and Neil Maskell is an asshole as well. You kind of want him to get revenge on these horrible people, but he deserves some wrongdoing as well, because he's a horrible person himself. The movie is just surrounded by evil people, basically, and the ending totally worked for me. And for me, this is a horror movie. People may disagree, but for me, once you watch the film, I don't think you can really argue that it's not. So that is Bull. Okay guys, hope you all enjoyed this list. I went over these movies a little bit quicker than usual, but what did you think of these films? Let me know down below. And what are some of your favourite first time watches of 2023? That'd be fun to hear as well. Thanks so much everyone. You take care, and I'll see you on the next video.